fancy way of knowing.
Good man is hard to find.
Which direction we are going.
That wrecked the El Camino. It would have been DWI.
We have reached a tipping point.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and those who identify as non-binary. It is time once again for the tipping point. Look, Larry's got that pretty picture behind him. Joining me, as always, is Larry Goodman. How are you doing tonight, Larry?
He didn't say one. He didn't say one. So I'm all thrown up. I had to do the line twice, but no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I'm so glad to be back on the air here. It's been a long time, and we got a juicy one tonight.
We got a juicy one tonight. Of course, a lot of people are going to be tuning into Ace Haven as he kind of goes into why he is no longer at Next Level. Whenever their next show is going to be, who knows? And we're also going to have ChaynMale, who I'm going to have to fight calling Chainsaw all night long, just so you know. ChaynMale, who is running these dynamic shows, and he's apparently a psychopath. So I always love talking to those people. So, Larry, what's going on in the world of wrestling? What do you got your mind on right now?
Well, a report just went up on GWH about the Lariato show, and they legit drew 800 people Saturday night in Dublin with the Matt Hardy, QT Marshall, and Bryce Cannon match, which was said to be very good. So yeah, and if you see the photos of that show, there's no reason to doubt that 800 number. They packed that place. So that's news. Another thing that people have been asking me about, at least a few have asked about, what was up with Georgia Championship Wrestling changing their name to Georgia Classic Wrestling. Why did that happen? Well, so here's the story. So the owner of the name, Grady Odom, as some people know, who'd owned it way back from when it left the original hands of Georgia Championship Wrestling. I think he got it in the 90s, the early 90s. He passed away in April, and he had met with Chris Nelms, and according to Chris, this would have been about 2022, and basically gave his blessing for Chris to use the name Georgia Championship Wrestling, and signed over some things to Chris to use the name, which Chris has been doing since then. But there was one piece that was not, where the loop was not closed, which is that on the Georgia website for corporations, Grady Odom was still the one registering as the agent. So you have to register every year, or you go into an inactive status. Well, he had registered for 22, 23, and 24. But nobody registered for 25 at the time of Grady's death. So I mentioned that and let Chris know that that was the case. And basically, said you might want to go ahead and register. Well, evidently he didn't register. And if you look at it now, if you look at the Georgia Secretary of State's website that tracks all the registrations of corporations and LLCs and blah, 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 a member of the Odom family registered the name for this, is the registered agent for this year. So basically, that's how Chris Nelms lost the ability to actually use the name.
Well, how much is it to register the name?
$35 a year.
To lose Georgia Championship Wrestling, that name, over $35. and a terminal bout of laziness. Yeah, that's
No.
terrible.
Now I did reach out to Chris. I did reach out to Chris about this, and I have not heard back from him. I don't know if did the family come to him right after Grady died and said, "Wait a minute, we want to keep this name. You can't have it."
Yeah, that's a possibility.
But according to Chris, he already had Grady. Yeah, but according to Chris, he had
Right.
his blessings for
But
several
Grady
years
had
and had
basically
stuff
given
in writing
everything to him. Right.
Yeah, that's what he said. So anyway, a little, a little piece of Georgia wrestling history. So it's now Georgia Classic.
Well, speaking of history, I'm really interested in the return of Priscilla Kelly to AWE, and she's bringing her man in tow. It should make for. I have a little bit of a prediction. I know AWE hasn't always drawn very well since their kind of like relaunch, but they did have one show that did very, very well, and it was the one where I looked at that poster and I went, you know what? This one actually looks good. It looks like a show I would attend. I got to say, I'm getting a similar feeling from this one. So I'm looking for AWE to at least go over 100 for this one, for the return of Priscilla Kelly. I think it's going to be really fascinating. I'm sure she's chomping in the bit to do it. It's when I can't help but think back to when I saw her last, which was at the last No Peace Underground show. And she came up to me and she wanted to talk. And what she wanted to talk about was the fact that she was not very happy in the WWE. And seeing shows like No Peace Underground made her want to basically get out of her contract. I sort of urged her to make that money while you can make that money. You're never going to make. And now, if you're a certain kind of wrestler at a certain kind of level, with a certain kind of hustle, you can make as much or more money. I never got the impression that she was going to be one of those people. She wasn't going to be like, so she made her money. I mean, I guess that was probably more than a year ago. And now she's free to do her thing. So they certainly have an intriguing matchup for her, one of the Renegade sisters for AWE. So hopefully this could be a great homecoming for her and a great boost to AWE. That's my thought anyway. Yeah,
and then those Renegade sisters certainly can go. So it should be a good match. And I'm curious to see how they do in Canton, of course. I mean, they do have history in Canton, although it goes back many years and wouldn't really apply to anybody who's going to be out there now, most likely. But
right.
It'd be very interesting to see how they do in Gary Lamb's building too.
Yeah, and that building has been getting a lot of attention lately. I've been thoroughly enjoying Donald Jakes and all of his promos from the Action Church. I think they've been hysterical. Some of the best things happening, which is good because I mean, honestly, with him back on the scene, it just seemed like the one absolute stone cold lock for this year's Georgia Wrestling History Awards to me is Matt Griffin. And without Donald Jakes, there quite literally doesn't appear to be any competition. Now, if you're a manager or a valet and you would beg to differ, you're certainly welcome to contact me. But as from where I'm sitting, Matt Griffin is head and shoulders above everybody. But Donald Jakes being involved, especially if he can cause a little dust up with Gary Lamb, who has recently returned to Southern Honor, could prove to be very interesting depending on what they do with all of it.
Yeah, it is not the pastor versus pastor feud a natural?
Oh,
yeah, the jokes write themselves for this. So,
who's the heel, though? Who's the heel?
Well,
Gary Lamb did save a dog, though. I'll give him that. He saved a dog.
You got to give him that one, right? Right.
Well, it looks like we're coming up on time for Mr. Chainmail, Armor Class 6 without shield for my Dungeons and Dragons geeks, to come on board.
Now, I have a message for Mr. Chainmail. Let's see what he's saying. He's setting up. He's sitting in AR Fox's office at WWA 4, So hopefully he comes on here in just a moment.
Okay.
He's setting up, or he was.
Where's WWA 4 located now?
I warned him you want to use Chrome software. They're still down there on Selig Avenue where they were. They didn't have to move. It was only the RIPW thing that got shut down, even though it's right next door to them. WWA 4 is still there, right in the building next door to where that show was supposed to take place in that abandoned warehouse, and not abandoned warehouse, a warehouse that was for rent, for lease,
right,
where that show never took place. But since they didn't,
when I was in charge of WWA 4, that comment alone might cause heart attacks for people that haven't been around the scene long enough to know that. We were in the back of that strip club. Well, it wasn't a strip club, I guess, but we were in that back of it where they used to store all these gambling machines in the warehouse and all kinds of crazy stuff on Fulton Industrial over there. I know they're no longer in that area, which is great. I think nobody should be in that area. I still have nightmares. So it's good to see WWA 4 still thriving. They've basically cranked out a lot of the really good talent that's come out in the last few years. So they're still going strong.
If we get ChaynMale on here, we're going to find out more about that because he is very closely linked with WWA 4 and uses a great amount of their talent on his shows.
Right.
They are trained there, so he's very closely linked with them.
One thing about WWA 4 is the men and women that come out of training there, they have a different kind of bond. The bond is very real, and I think a lot of that has to do with the sort of atmosphere that AR Fox has created, which is one of it really is the sort of, they get knocked for it because people accuse the training of not being that formal and that kind of stuff. But the flip is, it's a lot of people who have kind of a similar dream, who are there together, hanging out, wrestling, becoming friends, all of that kind of stuff. That's very real. I've seen videos of sort of just them messing around in the ring and having a good time. The put it this way. I think when you come out of WWA 4, you're probably connected to any number of people that you're training with. You have each other's phone number. You get each other booked. When one of you books their own show, they're going to book the lot of you. I don't get that same feeling from, let's say, Nightmare Factory graduates. I don't think most of them tend to have that kind of, oh yeah, we all came from the Nightmare Factory and we're all close. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm just saying WWA 4 has a really unique feel as far as that goes.
Well, and that was in action last night when I went to the Changes 3 show, because that show was loaded with WWA 4, and the lead heel group, Mob Ties, is 5 guys out of WWA 4. That they're the lead heel group, and they're all hanging out in the parking lot too. It's a tight bond.
I like that trend in Georgia wrestling in the last, let's say, 10 years. Obviously, people have always clicked up and people have always been close and people felt attached. Like the Wild Side guys were a thing and the Anarchy guys were a thing. But I think it's Exotic Youth that really made me feel like, my God, these guys really are brothers. As much as people talk that kind of yin yang all the time, the Exotic Youth have been tight, thick as thieves for years. And as they ascend, as Bryce Cannon's career gets better and better, as Zach Mosley has gone into running a promotion and booking a promotion and all that kind of stuff, they've all continued to work together. And I got to see that bond firsthand. When I took them out after the IWE show that I attended and we went to the bar, that's a story for another time. That bond between those guys is very real. And I think it culminates with the great work that they've done. When one of them gets injured, the other one steps in. They are the closest to the feeling of the fabulous Freebirds that I think you're you're going to have in modern Georgia wrestling. They really feel like that, you know.
And now they're facing another challenge with Pepper Bottom getting the gig with the Gwinnett Stripers. You know, he's basically done for the baseball season, and then who knows what happens after that. So they're back down to a duo again.
But you know, as soon as that guy's available, that he's going to pop in somewhere and they're going to be great. Like, that's the other part that I think it's one thing to be bond and to have a bond, but when each one of you serves a distinctly different role, yet can interchange for one another, I can't describe how powerful that is and how great that is. And it translates. I think what it comes down to with those guys is not only are they like-minded, they're smart. I think that's a fundamentally important part of their thing, is that they're smart. Just like I would say the hierarchy, I think what makes a lot of what the hierarchy, how that works is they are wrestling guys. And when they bring in somebody who's newer and a little younger, you immediately get the benefit of being around guys like Murder and Joe. And now we see that with things like Coven of the Goat. Nathan Mowry, whose development and growth has been exponential from the time that he took his first spot at Southern Honor, right? It's like, I can't even imagine what it's like to sit under a learning tree with the likes of Dan and Tank and that kind of thing. And so we're just seeing these, we've never had, I can't remember it being like this in the 20 some odd years I've been involved in Georgia wrestling, where there's so many different groups and so many groups that aren't throwaway, so many groups that aren't just a collection of dudes getting together, but this process of veteran smart guys helping newer guys get in and get over, and then those newer guys in turn helping the group by expanding what they're able to do and how they're able to appear and all that kind of stuff. I'll tell you this competition for tag team or group of the year, this will be a year that a group takes it and the competition is going to be absolutely fierce. There is no runaway, oh, these guys are so much better than these guys. I mean, just listen to the people that I named: Exotic Youth, Hierarchy, Coven of the Goat. That alone is just staggering levels of talent.
Speaking of tag team, Steve, this one will do your heart good. So we had an actual Washington Bullets match last night at that show. So they were doing an angle there where Deion Summers had no tag team partners to take on the Mob Ties. And who shows up to be his partners but the Washington Bullets? So that was really fun. And you should see John Williams. The guy is in the gym. He's probably in the best shape he's ever been in.
Wow.
He looks great. And Trey can still go. The reason we haven't been seeing him much around Georgia is Trey moved to North Carolina.
Oh, wow.
So where they're actually working more frequently now is in Nashville, Tennessee. Don't ask me why or how, but they're working shows in Nashville, Tennessee. So this was a rare sighting. I don't think they've been back here since the Labor Day show, the Labor Day weekend last year downtown. So it was really nice to see those guys.
Larry, I'm going to put you on the spot. You said that Changes 1 and Changes 2 were both really fascinating shows where a lot of interesting things happened. Changes 3, what are your initial thoughts about it?
Yeah, I'm working on the report on that. I really enjoyed it. It was a good show. I would not call it a great show. There were some problems with it. Mm-hmm. Oh, and we're gonna have to cut this short because ChaynMale is here.
Yeah,
so we're gonna go right to ChaynMale.
Please introduce the man.
Hello. Gee, and everybody loves me. Hello.
What's going on, man?
Well, listen, people. Most guys that come on here might have a character, but I am my character. That's the difference. This is who I am, the absolute G, and everybody loves me. How are you guys doing today?
I'm better now.
We're doing
man.
fine. We've been awaiting your arrival.
Well, here I am.
So,
I took some time out of my.
I've been wanting to.
Huh?
You're sitting in AR Fox's office?
I am. There, we got some training going on outside, and I am in the office at the moment. That is correct.
Nice. Well, I've been wanting to talk to you about this Dynamic Wrestling Association and what you're doing there, kind of what the concept is. I mean, you've run. To me, it sounds like a guerrilla operation. You've run the Believe Music Hall. You've run down on the Beltway. You've run Wild Wings. You've run movie studios.
What the hell?
What kind of concept?
And yesterday we just ran outside of the billiards hall. How about that?
In Milton. In a rich area up in Milton.
Yeah, that is correct. And I cut a promo like I normally do, talking smack to the civilians because that's kind of my thing. And Jimmy Yang told me that I should, Jimmy, whenever I'm around Jimmy Yang, because, Jazzy's on the show. So Jimmy always tells me to go as mean and as feisty as I can on these promos. And I'm like, Jesus, Jimmy, you're going to get me canceled. But he told me it would be wise to tell all these children that some of them were my bastard children and that their moms were easy. And that's why I probably slept around town. So I did that. And it got the reaction we needed. So that's perfect.
Nice.
Yeah, I bet you went over great in Milton.
Yeah, it was a very fun show for sure.
ChaynMale, what is your theory? My main complaint about, let's say, Next Level was I never felt like they had a vision. What is your vision running these shows? Is your goal, like my goal with PCW at one point was like, I just wanted to be the most prolific. I'm going to run this show on Fridays, this show on Tuesdays, and then any other venues I can get shows in, I'm going to get them in there. Is that what you're trying to do? Are you just trying to run it as many places as possible?
Well, I know that in this business, it takes a while before you're really making money at it, so to speak.
Sure. Absolutely.
I was in the music business for many years, so I take some of my connections with some venues and clubs and bars and my knowledge of booking bands and venues and bars to like Wild Wing. My band had been playing there for many years. I already had an in with them there, but like as far as like a goal or like a vision, like some of these shows that run in gymnasiums and YMCAs and places like that, I got no problem with those shows. Great wrestlers. A lot of these companies are using a lot of the same wrestlers.
Yes.
Of course, I'm at WWA4, so my shows are pretty A4 heavy, but I still use people from everywhere. But I feel like the shows that are at gymnasiums and like very wildly lit places are great shows. But when I try to do a show, I want to find a place that either has TVs that I can run everyone's entrance videos into, cool lighting, bar atmosphere, because there are there's these companies that are running at breweries and things like that, but I like to, I obviously Believe Music Hall had a 30-foot LED wall. My friend that owned the film studio, he has a giant LED wall. That's why I film there. But yeah, the goal really would be to Wild Wing has been letting us be there monthly, and they pay me good to bring in the show, so I don't really have to sweat it too bad. The Krog Street one is another one where they give me a great deal on the venue because believe it or not, the guy that got me in there was a GM at Wild Wing, and he was helping them out at this THC chill place.
That's how it goes, baby. Yeah,
exactly. And then they give me the place, and then whatever money I can muster up from the door is what I'm paying all the wrestlers with. One thing I wish I could get better at is bringing in more sponsors. I've had sponsors that have given me money and people that I know that have given me nice sums of money multiple times, out of the 20 shows I've run. Or, we did 10 shows last year in 12-month period, and we've already done like 12 or 13 in this first 6 months of this year. And, I feel like if you could pull these shows off and they're fun and exciting and I'm not losing any money and we're making a little bit of money and all the boys are walking home with a little bit of cash, I guess the ultimate goal is for somebody to see what I'm doing with the small budget that I have and maybe want to step in and be like, I like what you're doing with the budget you have now. maybe I can help out kind of deal, you know? So like, I'm not worried about padding my pockets myself right now. Like, sure, it'd be nice to put a little bit in my pocket with all the work that I do, but I want to just run consistently and continue to build. I mean, Matt Griffin's been a real help to me. He gives me a lot of, he talks to me and gives me advice about some things. You know, because I've been booking bands and been a promoter for many years in music, but it's different in wrestling, obviously. You know, so I'm still learning my way around it, and how to figure my budgets for the rosters and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a blast. I definitely envision us continuing to grow and finding it and bringing it to places that haven't had it before, to people that haven't seen it much before, you know?
Wow.
For sure.
Oof.
Talk a little bit about the transition and why and how from music to wrestling for you.
Well, let's see. So my alter ego, Gabriel Michael, played music for many, many years. And the band, the Madame Vega, which is plastered on my vehicle, you see me drive around town, we were going to do a reality TV show, and we came up with this whole concept for ChaynMale the band, which was kind of like, if you ever saw Spinal Tap, which was a mockumentary, a movie about a band that really existed. So, so there's a couple episodes on YouTube. I'll send you a couple links later, where we did like three or four episodes of ChaynMale the band. It was way before I was into the wrestling world. And like I said, ChaynMale is the drummer and a singer and an egomaniac and a larger than life character. So we filmed a bunch of these things, and while I was waiting for them to edit a couple of episodes, I started learning how to do it myself. So I started cutting a bunch of like promos, kind of like that guy Andrew Tate, who's like, you know, people don't like him because he's a billionaire, misogynist, or whatever. But I was like imitating him in a way to where like I'm super cocky and everybody loves me, you know? And
yeah,
there is layers to the ChaynMale character I haven't really gotten to put out there. But it all started from a thing I was doing, like I said, for about 8 months with the band. Like I said, it was a couple episodes with the band. Then I just started filming a bunch of content by myself. And then I had a friend who said, hey, that would probably be a good wrestling character. I was like, ooh, a heel, a bad guy, I get to cause mischief. So I was like, sounds cool. And then I met somebody who knew and started DWA. So Kevin Kirkland technically started DWA at the beginning, still affiliated with us, but I kind of took the ball and ran with it because I've just been booking all the gigs and everything. And he's helped a little bit here and there, but I've really been the driving force behind it. And I'm proud to say that's not ego, that is fact, mind you. But I've been the driving force behind all of it. I make, you know, every wrestler that does not have an entrance video, I create one for them. You know, I arrange the set list for everyone's entrance videos and music. And when I do get sponsors, I make cinematic, you know, cool things to float around the screen while it's going on. Larry, have you been to a show at Wild Wing yet, or no? Have you been to a couple of Wild Wing ones?
I have not been to Wild Wing. No, I've not been to Wild Wing.
So the Wild Wing ones have been good. Like I said, we've done 7 of them at Wild Wing. We did the 3 of them at Believe Music Hall. But yeah, you know, that's kind of where I'm at. Like, you know, I love to do this stuff, and I think, you know, just like learning the psychology of all of the wrestling, because, you know, doing the moves and all that stuff, I've been learning all the moves and all that stuff. That's great, but the psychology is the part that takes just so much more repetition and thinking and understanding and knowledge. You know what I mean? Like, there's just so much. Yeah. There's just so much to it. So the same way wrestlers are working out their kinks and like fully, it could take a few years to like really, really, really understand the psychology of wrestling, is where I'm at with the promotion of wrestling shows. You know, like in the music world, people will be like, okay, well, I would love it if my band would play for free if we got to open up for a national act and play in front of 1,000 people that are there for them, and we just get lucky enough to do it. It's got to be the same mentality when you're up and coming in wrestling. You know, obviously we don't want these guys that are out there risking their body. We don't want people necessarily working for free. But when you're coming up in it, if I could be on a card with some bigger wrestlers, and you know what I mean, there's opportunities.
Yes,
there's opportunities absolutely out there. And that's also how I feel. Like when I book it, I want to book good wrestlers, and I want to book wrestlers that have a following wrestlers that have the gear, the look, and the capabilities. You know, I want to book that. But I also, if I got someone that's up and coming, they can wrestle and they got it, but they also can draw a lot of people, or, you know, that's a way for them to get on my show a little bit quicker and easier, because, you know, all these guys are doing their best with all the promoting, and they're cutting promos and they're putting it out on their Instagrams and all that stuff. And that's great. And that's why I try to get everybody, because to me, the content you can have going through the machine of the algorithm that is out there in the world, that's why I tell everyone, get me as many of your promos as we can, like 10 or 12 days prior, so we can be sharing them on the Facebook groups and just continuously rotating them. But like I said, I use the band mentality to bring in what I consider like the same way you'd want to have, if my band was the main band that was the headliner of the night, and I wanted a couple bands to open up for us that are going to bring people, that's why I would put them on. Yes, they got to sound good, but they also got to draw people, you know?
Right.
So before we let you go, what if somebody ventures down to the Beltline? I believe is it this coming Saturday that Bruce and the Bruce tour?
We had a show on June 20th. So I have a show Friday night in Jasper at Rocco's Pub. It's our first time there. And once again, my dad's band played there. I've played there. So that's how I knew them. And I just was calling them up and cold calling, hey, let's try a wrestling show here. But the show that we were going to do on Krog Street on the 21st, it turns out they were double booked. So I'm moving it to July 18th.
Okay.
But a couple things that are of note that are new. So DWA, we have the DWA Championship, which Grayson Pierce held for about 10 months. Now Neji Ichiban has it. We have the Multiversal Championship title, which ChaynMale had and then lost it to Cruel. And that's kind of a belt that technically, see, I never really get to, this is why I want to find places to run consistently where I can really start telling the story, you know, because ChaynMale is really a multiversal character. So it's like ChaynMale the band, ChaynMale is fun and cocky and over the top. ChaynMale the wrestling character and identity is a bad, evil heel, you know? So still larger than life, have the ego and all that stuff. But, you know, I love doing all this and I want to continue doing it. So, yeah, Friday will be at Rocco's. And then, yeah, we'll be on the July 18th. We'll be over at back at Krog Street again. Yeah, it's wild. Oh, yeah, what I was going to say is we have new belts. I have a women's title we're going to be announcing soon. And then another belt called the King of the South.
Well, cool. Thanks a lot for coming on and filling us in about you and DWA.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. All right, Larry, while you introduce Ace and bring him on, I'm going to go get something to eat because I have a feeling. I'm going to eat my. I've been saving my favorite snack for Ace being on. So I will be right back. Please bring it.
Oh, okay. So we're joined now by the man of the hour here, the promoter, booker of Pro South Wrestling, formerly of Next Level Championship Wrestling, to kind of fill us in on like what actually is the real story here of Ace Haven and Next Level and the year of 2025. Welcome to the show, sir.
Doing great. I got my taco chips. I am absolutely ready for this. Ace, I would say, I don't even think you need a lead-in question. Well, if you had to sum up, what happened? Like, at what point did you think, I don't know if this is going to work out? Because on the face of it, it seemed like everything should have been great, right? You're a renowned booker. Josh was universally praised for hiring you as the booker. It seemed like, I mean, with what I was privy to was, you know, there was some money involved. There was actual budget for talent that was quite substantial for an indie show. And then, I mean, things fell apart rather quickly. At what point did you sense that maybe this wasn't all it was cracked up to be?
To be honest, I would say the realest eye-opening for me happened in the run-up to what was supposed to be episode 1 on January 25th. And that's such a strange story. Because as I got the Booker job, I was promised that money was no problem. Now, I did not act like that, but I did work within the realm of having more money to play with. I was also told that we had a venue as well as show dates for the entire calendar year, booked, paid for, scheduled, all that red tape done. As well as the fact, which I know for a fact, I told both of you guys this, among a few other people, that we had $10,000 in sponsors. That was the big selling point that Josh brought to me from the beginning. So we get the first show announced, the 25th, right? We're booking the card. We're working towards it. And Josh comes to me, and don't quote me on the date. I can dig back through and find it. But sometime in December, Josh comes to me and says, we don't have a venue. What do you mean we don't have a venue, Josh? What do you mean we don't have a venue? You had a venue booked and paid for ahead of time for 12 months. This is already handled. It was handled. So at that point, I was kind of rocked in my foundation of, does this have any kind of legs? And now, admittedly, initially, I tried to chalk that up to, this dude's not a promoter. Like, yeah, he may have done some stuff with IWE or whatever, but he's not ever been the decision maker. So he doesn't understand what he stepped off into. So, maybe he's just stepped off into the deep end some. We'll throw him some water wings. Maybe he'll make his way back to the shallow end a little bit. Little did I know that not only would this dude not grab the water wings that were throwing him, he would turn himself upside down and lay at the bottom of the pool.
What's an example of that?
So we get to the recovery, right? We've got to get a new venue, right? We don't have a venue. We have to have a venue. So he books the warehouse. Looks great. He sends me all these pictures of it. Nice little looking venue, right? Kind of has this weird, as I described it, like high class underground feel to it. But we get to the run up of the show, and they don't pass building inspection. So we booked a venue, and by we, I mean Josh. Josh booked a venue, announced the date, booked an entire card, or had me book an entire card, and the venue could not legally rent to us, which facilitated the original date change, which then in turn, as like a domino effect, facilitated us going to the Legion and changing the entire show calendar that had been put out at that point. Which then in turn threw all kinds of talent into disarray.
So one more thing about that initial date. Okay, so that warehouse place wasn't going to be ready. You couldn't run there. How hard did you fight him on finding any place, no matter what it was, to hold that date?
Oh, that was the eternal struggle. I never from the start wanted to be in Augusta. Augusta was saturated with wrestling. Do I think Augusta could sustain more wrestling shows? Who knows? Who knows? The thing is why? Why are we going there if there's already all of this wrestling product already in town? So there's just no reason to try to figure out if Augusta can sustain these many wrestling shows when we could just go to anywhere else. There's all kinds of towns in the area. It's a big area around there. We could have went to any of those, and I believe that it would have avoided a lot of bullshit that we had with other Augusta area promotions, as well as brand confusion and the expectation to present talent that was used by the other Augusta shows. It kind of became a turf war that we didn't need to be involved in, but that Josh very, very, very heavily wanted to be involved in. So there was never, with Josh, there was never an option of running anywhere but the Legion.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, what's to stop you from picking another place? What's the deal with the Legion in him, do you think?
I can only speculate, Steve, but I can go off a couple statements that were made to me during my tenure. One thing that he specifically said to me is Augusta wrestling fans won't go anywhere else but the American Legion. Which I don't know if you've seen the crowds that are coming out for Phoenix or for Viral, but that's very clearly not true. They will very clearly go other places besides the American Legion building because literally hundreds of them are. Literally hundreds of them are. I don't know if it was some kind of obsession with Timothy Blackman and trying to defeat IWE or some kind of weird thing with that. We never got, at least on my ends, I never got a story from Josh on why he left IWE or why him and Tim aren't friends anymore. At this stage, I don't really care. But just to throw that out there into the ether, we were never privy to that story either. So whatever has happened there is like the Ark of the Covenant in Indiana Jones or something, because everyone is guarding that secret with their lives.
Well, I guess you got to buy a ticket for Next Level's July show to hear the story right from the horse's mouth, right?
I heard it's called Nothing Left to Lose. So, I mean, it's not episode 5.
So I have to ask you about the first show that did take place at the Legion, which was, by all accounts, by all measures, a lousy show, pretty much across the board. And I said to you, it didn't seem like your head was really in the game that night in terms of like what I know you can do as a booker and what actually happened that night. Can you speak a little bit about your mindset going into that show?
Well, my mindset going into that show was I didn't know this audience, and I was introducing a lot of new characters into this audience. So I did try to be a little more reserved than what Ace Haven probably typically would be with my style of booking, because I kind of just wanted to get a feeler out of that audience of like, okay, how will they react to things? But also, with that, while the locker room atmosphere I think was really good, it was this weird situation of not really knowing what to do and who to go to. And how the locker room was supposed to run, because I got told show day that David Garrick needed to have something to do in the locker room. And I don't know David, so this is not a personal statement on him, but I don't know David. And in this entire run-up to this show, he had contributed absolutely nothing. And now I was supposed to find some role for this guy who I have no idea what talents he may or may not possess in the locker room. So I do find him a role, and his role becomes assembling whoever is in the next segment and making sure they're good to go and ready to go. So he immediately screws this up because he goes to Trevor Eon and mistakes him for Hakeem Young. So he started trying to pull Trevor for Hakeem's match. And that was a mess. And it was just kind of, there was a lot of people floating around backstage. I'm sure you may remember that from the couple times you were backstage that night, Larry. There was a bunch of people floating around backstage that to be honest, I thought they were ring crew. Only to be told later that I was supposed to have found them roles to do in the locker room. This was nothing that was ever discussed. And if I've ever had a crew help me at a wrestling show, it's been a crew that I've handpicked, not one that was assigned to me. But I've been running locker rooms more or less by myself for almost 2 decades. I don't need a small army of people I've never met to help me run a locker room full of people that I do know. So I thought that was kind of odd. I had a bit of a sour taste in my mouth from the fact that every show in the locker room, Josh Fields continuously had an alcoholic beverage in his hand. I didn't appreciate that. I thought it was a bad look. If you want to, and that's not me trying to be righteous, because if you want to drink a beer with me after the show, I'll drink a beer with you after the show. But I'm not going to be drinking during an event, whether I'm the one holding the event or whether I'm just wrestling on the event or whatever the case may be. I just feel it's bad optics for the locker room. It's a bad image for the fans to see that too. And maybe that's stuffy. Maybe that's being kind of, closed-minded. But I just feel like there's a certain presence you want to present when you're associated with something like that. And
I'll jump in on this because my contact with Josh. My impression of Josh is he has a bit of like imposter syndrome, where he wants to appear very manly and he wants to appear in charge and he wants to appear. I mean, when I had the conversation with him on the phone, he must have said something close to this phrase at least a dozen times, which is, I don't let any man blank, right? All this macho posturing and all the rest of that. I imagine that's a lot of what having that drink in the hand was about. This idea that I'm one of the boys and look, I got a drink and, I'm doing this thing. And I just always got the impression that he's a guy that felt like an imposter and felt like a poser. And so went out of his way to give himself a little liquid courage and a little bit of like, hey, I'm a man's man. And even like when you put up the post, Ace, of, that you're going to do this tonight. And on the surface, he comments and he has all these laughing things like, this is so hilarious. But I'm sure deep down, he's scared and he's listening and he's like, oh God, they're going to talk about me. He's like an insecure guy who's constantly having to pose. That's why I told him, and that's why I believe, I don't think he's cut out for this shit. I think he's too thin-skinned. He clearly wants to be the booker, which to me, I think a lot of the reason you got chosen as the booker, because he was looking to impress other people. I'm not saying you're not a great booker. You are. Clearly you are. How much communication did you have with Josh about being the booker? Like, was this the kind of thing where you contacted him or did he contact you? How and what was the pitch to get you to come over? I guess I'm really curious about that because it seems like you guys had zero contact with each other before then, right? So
we did. We had zero contact. So I reached out when he was doing an open talent casting call. And I was certain. I told Amy, I said, this dude's doing a casting call. He's already got dates announced. Surely he has a booker, right? Surely. So I just kind of shot my shot, and he was pretty much all in. It took pretty much nothing. I just sent him, as they would say in wrestling, the resume, and he was sold. And I agree with you, Steve. And it's not to self-deprecate myself, but I do not believe he hired me for anything that he perceived to be skill or not. It was purely posturing. It was to get the Georgia Wrestling History Booker of the Year, which, by the way, as much as I enjoyed winning the award, sold me 0 tickets moving forward. So it's not like it benefited me in any way. It doesn't really mean anything. It means something to ourselves because it gets the value that we assign it. But most of the audience, they don't care. Most of the audience doesn't care who wins these awards. So I think it was like you exactly said. I think you're 100% right. I think Josh was posturing, and it would give him something to brag about. It was like, oh, I've got the Georgia Wrestling History Booker of the Year. That means I'm going to have the best show. And it's like, well, the issue, the real downfall of Next Level is the lack of synergy between Josh and I. And I feel like, as lousy as that first show may have been, I feel like we really knocked it out of the park with the next 3. And I think that was only going to continue to go up personally. However, whereas we stepped up our writing in the booking side of things, I don't feel like Josh's promotional game ever stepped up. If anything, I feel like it stepped down.
Wow.
Okay. I was told he had flyers. Nobody that I ever conversed with, be it people in his own team that confidentially came to me, or other wrestlers, or when I would be out and about during the shows, nobody ever saw flyers. Nobody was ever given flyers. Maybe they exist, but that's the information that I went off of. And I also feel like if you were doing all this flyering and you had all these advertisements out and all of this stuff, and we're drawing the lowest of all of the shows in Augusta, I don't think you're doing all of that advertising. That's just me personally. I could be wrong. But if everyone only comes to wrestling at the American Legion, if we put a flyer out saying there's going to be wrestling at the American Legion, then we should have 500 people.
So along the lines of promotion, the shows were all taped, but what happened to the footage of the shows?
That's a great question. I have very few snippets of episode 1 and episode 3. Episode 2 was filmed, edited by Superjaw. I have not seen a second of it. And I suspect that's probably not on their end. I suspect that was either on the case of Josh never released it, or if you believe all the accusations of all the talent that came out later, maybe they were never paid for it. I don't know that to be a fact. All I know is that we had Superjaw. They seemed all in. I had a conversation with everyone in their crew. Everyone was really cool. They did a great job filming, it seemed like. And then we never saw them again, nor did we ever see the footage that they filmed for us on that day. So I don't know. I don't know if it was bad business on their part, and it's definitely not an accusation because I don't know, or if it was business on Josh's part. But I can say that at one point when Josh was raising warning flags about the budget, I volunteered to bring all of my stuff in and do the filming that we were already doing at Pro South and that we do at New Era and that we do from time to time for a few other shows. The 7 show up in Nashville that we're doing this weekend. We do this on the side. I offered to bring all of my equipment up and film the show for free. All he would have to do would be hire a camera operator. And there was never any interest in that. There was never a conversation had about that. There was never that sounds pretty cool, or that'd be a way to get our content out or anything. Because to me, personally, and again, this is speculative, but me personally, I don't think there was ever a desire to have it out there. I think his thing was, I want to run a show so I can say I'm running a show, and I want to draw more than 10. And I want everyone to tell me how great I am while I'm there. And that's what I feel like is all he ever wanted out of wrestling. I don't think there was ever a desire to have the best show or creative booking or to have a different product than what IWE was putting out or anywhere else for that matter, or to put the content out. At no point in time was that ever the plan. And to add to that, prior to the launch, Steve and I put together probably 5 or 6 pages of a workup for Next Level, and it was nothing booking wise at all. It was all like presentation of the company and the way the seating would be handled and the way that the doors would open and just everything, the vibe of the entire show from the moment that the show gets announced all the way up until it starts. It was nothing even about the content on the show. It was just like how to make it feel different. And I sent him all of that, and he basically crapped all over it. And for me, being the creative artist that I am, he got into wrestling to make money, which is what he told the locker room on day one. And I got into wrestling to make art. And I think that's where our synergy never really connected, is because he didn't care about that at all. He did not care. His thing was, I want to outdraw Tim, book all the same people that IWE had, give me some big-breasted, blonde-haired white women to look at, and we'll call it a day.
He took great offense to when I kind of made fun of the notion that he would tell the locker room, "I'm here to make money," and he goes, "Well, why else would you run a business?" And I'll say it again: if you get into indie wrestling with the primary intent of making money, you are a fool. There's a million different ways to make money. If you don't care about what you're doing to make that money, there are ways that are virtually foolproof to make money. Indie wrestling, I'll just make this bold, loud statement and then deal with the backlash. Nobody's making fucking money who's running an indie wrestling group in Georgia. Nobody's making money. And even if over the long haul, they somehow would make an argument that they made money, proportional to how much time and effort and resources they put into to make whatever pittance that they make, it is such a laughable amount per hour. It is probably something akin to like 32 cents an hour. That again, you're not running
for sub-minimum wages.
And I mean, and to enter a business that you don't know, you don't really know. When again, IWE, people remember that thing at a certain point. They don't seem to remember the half a year where they were tanking, drawing 200 or less. And the fact that they didn't even do the blow-off show to the biggest angle that they had ever done, right? They never did a last show. They never did a War Games show. And James Caleb Kitchen's like, I'm very proud of the work that we did. At one point we were drawing. It's like, if I did that whole Empire PCW angle and it culminated at Sacred Ground 3 with a series of half-attended shows at Academy Theater, non-attended shows at, and then Sacred Ground 3 was a barely attended event that was horrible as well. Nobody would remember or care about it, right? Like IWE had been withering on the vine for half a year. And the idea that we need to book all the same people that were drawing 200 for IWE, I'm not saying that they weren't draws. I'm just saying that Josh never showed an indication that he'd be able to pull this thing off,
So it appears we lost Ace for a second here. Got my phone rang. I'm trying to see if that's him getting back in touch here, because we didn't. He's alluded to the money stuff, but we haven't really talked about what was the real deal with the money people being owed and so forth.
From what I understand, and this is talking to Ace, that anybody who was owed money, and it was not a small amount of people. Again, people contacted me to tell me things, right? That for the most part, it seems like people were made whole. But again, there seemed to be this kind of this disparity between Josh knowing what people were supposed to get paid. There seemed to be this kind of thing where people would just like get paid and look at their pay envelope or whatever and go like, what the fuck is this short? Again, it just seems like there's a lack of communication, a lack of knowledge, or maybe somebody who needed time to get the money together. Who knows? In any case, it all reeks of not being professional. It all reeks of a freaking rudderless ship. Like, being in charge isn't holding a drink in your hand. Being in charge is making sure everything's fucking handled. What the irony, I think, and of course we're glad to have Ace back. Josh needed a Josh because he was that guy for Tim. Tim was the face of it. But it's Josh who like kind of got the ducks in a row and made sure stuff got done.
So we got
right. Ace is back, but please, Ace, continue. Yeah, Larry, you had something you wanted Ace to talk about.
So Ace. Yeah, well, I mean, one thing we haven't really clarified yet in terms of your parting with Next Level. Did you quit? Were you fired? Was it a mutual parting of the ways? What happened?
Okay, well, first off, I have to break the fourth wall, and I know he's going to be watching later. So, hi, Tyler Culprit. I hope you're doing well, my friend. No, I was fired from Next Level Championship Wrestling, and that's kind of the reason that this whole interview is happening is because the word that has got around, and when I say the word that has got around, the word that Josh has put out to several people is that we mutually agreed to part ways, which I suspect was just damage control so that he wouldn't get backlash from firing me or would not deal with the mass roster exodus that has clearly happened over there due to me leaving. And that's just inaccurate. I knew probably a week, maybe 10 days before he fired me that I was not going to be going back, whether that would be from me leaving or him firing me, because we had some fairly heated discussions. But that whole last 2 weeks from the last show, which was May 17th, all the way up to when I was fired, there were very heated discussions. Because as we get to the May show, he tells me we're not running June. This is the first I've heard of it. Yet somehow, I am the last person in the building to know, with some people telling me, fans included, that they had known about us not having a show in June as far back as the April show when we ran against the Masters in Viral. This was nothing that was ever approached with me. Then the point of contention became, are we running in July? Because Phoenix, and I could be wrong on which promotion is, but Phoenix or one of the other Augusta shows was running a show at some fort that's nearby. And Josh told me it was going to be a free show and it was going to kill us. Which I then did my own research and found out it was not a free show. And then we brought up the $1 million question to him of, but Josh, Augusta wrestling fans only go to the American Legion building. So they're not going to drive to a fort to see pro wrestling in Augusta. They're going to come to the American Legion building. And he did not like that.
You would again been running against Viral unless Viral changed their date to match yours. If you'd have gone with your original date and that was for July, you would have been running against Viral, as you did in April.
Yes. And I had told him, I had got word sent to me through somebody associated with Viral. And again, this is third-party information. So, again, I don't know how authentic it is. But I was told that Viral was going to start scheduling their shows directly head-to-head with ours, which is a side effect of what happens when you start running in the same town as other people. So I don't necessarily blame them.
And the sign that Viral wasn't worried. right? Viral at first was probably like, this sucks, blah, blah, blah. And then it was, because let me make this part clear, because Ace might not know, you might not know this. I mean, Viral has always hated Tim and doubly hated Josh. So when Josh would try to buddy up to Viral online, like, isn't it great what all of us Augusta promotions are doing? And I was just like, there is no way Phoenix and, Viral read that and go, that's so great, Josh. Yeah, you're one of us. I'm sure they're thinking, like, you're the third horse in a 3-horse race right now. Like, why are you kissing our ass? Whatever respect they probably had for Josh was gone and out the window then.
And I don't know that we were ever even a horse in the race, because I never felt like Josh put that kind of work into it.
He didn't.
There would be so many things that we would get there show day and would not be addressed. And the thing is I can help. I've been a promoter / booker for almost 2 decades, and I can help. I have the knowledge to help, but I was never asked to help, nor was my opinion ever valued, because I did a couple times give my unsolicited opinion on some of the business practices and more or less got ignored. So after that, eventually it just becomes, hey, you're the booker, you're paid to do a job, do your job, but let Josh do his. And I feel like the promotional side of things, that he never really did anything besides post on Facebook. And posting on Facebook does not create a huge audience at your live event. That's just not how this works. And then there was the brand confusion, because at one point in time Josh brought up the rumor, I guess, that this was a work between him and Tim, and I don't know how true that is, or that was ever a rumor at all. But I will say that our last 2 shows we rented all of Tim's equipment, and at one point I had to actually tell him, like, hey, can we turn the ring skirts around? The ring skirts that say IWE on them? Can we flip them around?
Oh, no.
I mean, it's bad enough we're in the same building. Now we're using the same equipment, and then you want me to book the same wrestlers. And I'll throw this out here. I was told at one point that nobody that we booked was a draw in Augusta. So, that's, to me, is a personal attack at Alex Kane, Rob Killjoy, Cruel, Alexander Lev, the Hierarchy, All-Star Special, pretty much anyone, Sauronaro, anyone of any kind of note that worked for us got attacked with that statement. The only person that Josh Fields ever told me was a draw in Augusta was White Mike. We need White Mike. So, Mike, I'm telling you, buddy, if you have an opening July 19th, you need to get Josh Fields to get his checkbook out, because if he can afford to pay you when all of his, YouTube TV and his Typefully and his paid YouTube or Twitter Premium, all that stuff comes out of his account, if he has any more money left, you could probably get a pretty nice payday, because they need you in Augusta.
Does he have Twitter Premium? Is that real? Like, he paid for the blue check, basically?
So, speaking of money,
He
when
does.
did you...
And not the cheap one either.
In spots.
He got the top plan. It's about $600 a year, the top plan. Because I look for that blue check mark when I decide what wrestling shows I'm going to.
Larry, what was your question, Larry?
I apologize for talking, but when did you become suspicious of $10,000 in sponsorship money? When did you I was wondering when Ace became suspicious about $10,000 in sponsorship.
I kind of got hit twofold in that, Larry, because going up to the first show, he was super happy with ticket sales and talking about how we were on path to outdraw the last IWE show, and we'd already sold this many tickets, and I'm pretty sure I updated you on that in real time as that was happening. If I dig through our messages and our conversations, I'm pretty sure I told you at one point that when Josh told me how many tickets were sold.
Yeah,
those people didn't show
you
up.
did. So you mentioned a Shaq walk in and see 100 people.
Yeah, me too. Those people didn't show up. Just 100 of them had show day car trouble, I guess. And then the budget started getting sliced continuously. And now, admittedly, I never spoke paydays, but I did speak the budget that I was operating on in my self-imposed budget, for the record. And the talent that I was getting for the budget that I was coming out, people were mind blown that we were pulling this talent for this. But my budget started getting slashed every show, just lower and lower and lower and lower. So it went from unlimited budget to X number of dollars to 500 less dollars to X dollars lower, to the point of where eventually we were running on a budget that could not sustain some of the talents that he had negotiated with prior to me coming on board. And that became a point of contention, because even as the booker, I feel like if you have already negotiated with a talent and you've got them to a pay rate, and that pay rate needs to change, then that becomes on you to renegotiate, not me, because that was never a deal that I negotiated.
Mm-hmm.
You negotiated that deal, and you gave those talents an outrageous amount of money for the budget that we're trying to operate on, and then wanted me to clean up your mess. And that's just not how this works.
And for anybody who thinks that Ace is exaggerating, Ace quoted me some of the dollar amounts that talent were making. And so then I went out and I confirmed whether it was true or not, and it's true. And I'll just say, I don't begrudge the boys making money. It was the kind of money, though, that basically guaranteed that Next Level could never make a profit. And it was money given to people who had been proven to not draw in that building, especially at the end of IWE's tenure. So why in the hell are you paying? I mean, just shocking. Like, paying Georgia indie talent that are on everybody's shows amounts that exceeded what I would have paid for, let's say, Kyle O'Reilly or Davey Richards or Leva Bates, or any of those people got paid less than some of the talent that were doing Next Level. I mean, just unsustainable. And we never talk about this with the Legion Hall. How much does the Legion Hall cost to rent? Do you know?
I have it somewhere in my files, but it also was one of those numbers that continuously changed. And then also, allegedly, somebody called in on us that we were going to have, X number of people, and the original insurance didn't cover that, so that was upped on us. And of course, Josh wanted to blame Viral for that. And I don't know, because I'm not in the know of that situation. All I know is that I was told an extra $175 started going towards the Legion for insurance after episode 2. So I don't know the reality of why that happened or how it happened. All I know is that that's what I was told was happening. That also could entirely be a fictional event, because I have no way of confirming that. That's just what I was told as we ran into the end of the 4 shows that I wrote for Next Level. But another thing that really, really bothered me with the promotion as a whole was just the treatment of the women's division. And I've made no bones about it. I'm not the biggest fan of women's wrestling, but if I'm going to book women's wrestling, if that's what I'm told to book, I'm going to book women's wrestling, and I'm going to book women's wrestling with some of the best performers that I can find, because I still take pride in my job, and I still want to present good pro wrestling. Once we had Jada and Tootie in, who I cannot recommend enough, 2 incredible performers, and I'm not even going to put the asterisk there of for women's wrestlers. They're just really good performers as a whole, and I would put them on the same level and in competitive level as any other male that we've ever booked. They're just phenomenal athletes. They're really good work ethics, really good performers. And I feel like the no count out match they had at episode 4 was probably the best women's wrestling match I've ever seen live. Just incredible performers. But those two, along with Salem, Josh continuously wanted to replace them. Now, I'm not making any accusations because nothing was said directly about this, but you can run your mind wild on what direction you want to on why there was a motivated effort to replace Jada, Tootie, and Salem on our show. And I'll just let you run wild with that theory on your own. But he was never happy with our women's wrestlers, never happy with the women's wrestling, and was not happy with our ring announcer, nonetheless.
So for those who don't get the first name references, Ace is talking about Jada Stone, Tootie Lynn, and the ring announcer, Salem Alexander, who also now announces for PCW and elsewhere. So he didn't cotton to having any of those folks on the show.
I mean, I'm not playing devil's advocate for Josh, but I'll say this. Clearly, at a certain point, he had an idea of what he wanted. And to me, it was one of these things where I'm sure he hired you as booker and then was kind of hands off. But I don't think he was hands off because he was allowing you to do your job. I think a lot of that had to do with just sheer laziness. And just from the effort I saw on his end, which was virtually nothing, right? And then all of a sudden, he's getting bashed left and right. And so then all of a sudden he has like his ideas that he wants. And somebody's got to foot the blame. And it's certainly not going to be Josh. Never have I seen one post from him going, we could have done a better job. He's like, I'm definitely going to get my promotional thing going. I'll give this to Gary Lamb. Gary Lamb would make excuses at times, right? They just go like, yeah, I wasn't really trying is usually his excuse for something, right? When they don't draw well, it's like, well, I'm on cruise control or I'm not really involved anymore or whatever. But when Gary sets himself to doing something, he's the first to take the blame for stuff. You never hear him complaining about a holiday or, he's a promoter through and through. And so he knows the truth, which is if you make a loud enough noise and you're doing good shit, people show up for you, become the excuse for other people, right? Well, shit, you don't want to go up against Gary's Barbecue and Brews, right? You become the problem. And Josh, he just never seemed like there was going to be no woman good enough except for the ones that he booked because he booked the women in IWE. So I'm sure he thought that was something that he was great at. To which I say, then you should fucking do it, right? You can't have it both ways. You can't give Ace autonomy and then go, well, no, I have a vision and Ace isn't enacting it, which is a lot of the excuses he was giving to me and he said to other people. Now, while that might be true, right, that, well, Ace wasn't doing everything that I wanted him to do, part of it was it seems like roles were never clearly defined and things were shifting all the time. When I think of Next Level, I think of a promotion that had no solid foundation for anything. You didn't know what venue they were going to run. You didn't know if a show was going to get canceled. You didn't know if flyers were getting made. You didn't know what people were supposed to get paid. You didn't know this. You didn't know that. Did you hire Diana Michelle? A straightforward question I asked Josh. So is Diana Michelle really getting $200? And then is answering behind the scenes, telling him what to say and all this kind of shit. It's like the problem is Josh is always worried about people's reaction to things instead of the truth. And if that's you, then you're not going to do too well in the wrestling business because at some point there has to responsibility has to lay at somebody's feet, and he wants it to lay at Ace's feet, and he wants it to lay at Skrilla's feet. It's all these people have betrayed me, and all these things have blah 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 blah. You know who he sounds like? He sounds like fucking Tim when he was going through it. And it was is. End of the day, and you have a really unique and fruitful relationship, and I feel like Josh could have had that with Ace, at least from the Ace end. But at the end of the day, Josh was in this thing for the wrong reasons. I still don't know why Josh wanted to run his own promotion. I know why Gary wants to run Southern Honor. I know why Matt Griffin wants to run Action. I know why everybody wants to do what they're doing except for Josh. Because Josh's thing was he's running his thing out of spite, and those things never last, whether it's Andy Anderson and NWA Atlanta or countless other examples in Georgia wrestling. You have to do it because you love the shit. That's why I was so offended at, I'm in this to make money, boys. You know what? The boys don't want to hear that shit. And if they do want to hear that shit, it's because they're like, well, cool, if you're going to make my money, I'm going to make my money too. Fuck you. And that's not the place that you want to go to start a promotion. And I think we've seen the effect.
So, Ace, after this experience with Next Level, if you were offered a booking job somewhere else other than Pro South, would you be inclined to still consider other booking jobs? You're just going to stay at Pro South?
Oh, absolutely. You know, one would think that maybe this would make me shy away from wanting to do outside booking. Not at all. I think maybe I need to vet my promoters a little better. You know, because some dudes, some guys are just fucking idiots. And that's really kind of what I believe it boils down to. I mean, you have a dude like Josh Fields who is actively looking up why his dog is just staring at him. Well, the answer is, Josh, is it's probably like everybody else trying to figure out what the fuck your vision is for Next Level. Because even the dog doesn't know, and the dog lives with you. You know, the thing that he likes to tell people is we were never on the same page vision wise, but I never had any idea what Josh's vision was. I never had an idea. There was never anything there other than we need White Mike. So once again, Mike, if you're watching, man, get you a booking out of this because he wants you bad. He wants you bad, and you can make some money off of him. So go get this dude's money, please. But you know, none of it made sense, and like, I don't know. Like you said, I don't know what he got into wrestling for. And
I've been told that, I'm sorry, Ace. I've been told that Amy's here. I would love to get Amy's perspective. I think she's really smart, and obviously she knows you. But I'm curious, as somebody who got to kind of see this thing from a little bit of a distance. Damn, that's true. Amy, what, like, as you're listening to this, what are you dying to say? Like, I just want to get that out right off the get. What are you dying to say about this whole thing?
Here's the thing. I haven't heard a single of it. Just clocked out at work.
It's been a train wreck.
I mean, Amy, what is your take on this whole thing with Next Level, I guess?
Did we lose her? Am I still here?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, Larry. Are we back?
Sorry about that. Apparently I got cut off there somehow.
We're taking technical
Amy.
difficulty
We are
to the
losing
next
everyone.
level.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. I see Amy's name on the screen.
I do not see her.
No. We lost her. Bob says we lost her. Ugh.
What about Steve? Is Steve with us? No.
I see him. Bob says go.
Oh, there we go. There we go.
Continue,
So
I don't
Ace.
Okay.
Ace, here we go. Ace, what is the long and short of it about Next Level and Josh? Is there a way that they could be successful by your estimation? Is there a way it could happen? And if so, what would it take for them to be successful?
I absolutely think they could be successful. I believe they could be. It's going to take Josh taking a really good, honest look at himself and what he's contributing to the process. And more than likely, he's going to need a booker. And he's going to need somebody that's not going to take advantage of him and turn him up by his ankles and pour money out of his pockets. Because I absolutely could have done that, especially early on. And I chose not to. And maybe poor decisions were made. But I chose not to because I believed in the vision of Next Level and doing something with it. I had something to prove. I felt like Josh had something to prove. Obviously, he did not. He did not feel similarly. But, I mean, at this point, it's exactly what needs to happen. He needs to do a full reboot. All of the roster is gone, from my understanding. All of the creative is gone. And then the main creative force behind the promotion is now gone. So at this point, do a reboot. But if you're going to, you may as well change that dumbass name and get out of Augusta and do a completely clean restart. That's what the company needs. If you're going to change the entire creative direction of the promotion and change it structurally from the top down, 4 shows in, you may as well move locations, change the name, and do just a hard reboot. In my opinion. But I fully believe they could be successful. I don't think they will be, but I 100% believe they could be successful. They're just not going to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's Larry, like looking at this whole situation, knowing the players involved, everything you've heard, Larry, what is your impression of where Next Level goes from here? What's your prediction of what's going to happen?
Well, my prediction is if they stay in the same Legion Hall with the same crappy production values and just try to change the wrestlers, they'll run a couple shows and that'll be the end of it. Viral, by the way, has sold out all of their floor seats and ring sides for their show next weekend. How successful Phoenix will be running as many shows as they're running in Augusta, I don't know, but they sure have a lot that they're doing. If there's going to be any chance, it's like what Ace said, it would have to be somewhere else, not in Augusta, in a complete reboot. But I don't see Josh Fields doing that. And barring that, I don't see like where it goes from here except a couple more shows, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, when I talked to Josh, he seemed, adamant that we're going to keep running, as if I would be impressed. I was just like, all right. I mean, I guess Ace's solutions make as much sense as anything. I just don't. I think there's too many people that are loyal to Tim. I think, I think most of the boys see him as the worst thing that you could be seen as as a promoter, which is
Amy, if you're there, speak up.
Hello.
There she
You're
is.
back again.
There she is.
Can you guys hear me this time?
Please.
We can.
Please
You killed the
weigh
whole
in.
thing last time.
It wasn't me. It wasn't me. I'm sorry. What's up, guys? Can you guys hear me now, though?
Yeah.
You're with us.
Okay.
Go wild.
I'm not really going to go wild. I just wanted to answer Steve's question of my whole take on everything is that it's not fair that, Josh has said to us, this is my rebuttal to Josh, and he knows it's my rebuttal to Josh. Things just didn't work with us. Well, there was never an opportunity for things to work with us because there's the opportunity that we were given, the hand that we were dealt. No one could. I mean, I'm sure there's someone that could book with that, but he knew from the jump that that's not how we book, and the continuous changing of dates. Like, how can we lock down any talent if you're going to change the dates on them, and then also cancel when you've already had them booked for multiple months? That's messing with people's bookings, and people get very, and rightfully so, get very upset when you start messing with their money. So we have talent booked out for multiple months, and then you wait till the night of the show to let us know, oh, we're not running next month, just for us to find out multiple people knew there wasn't going to be a show. Why were we the last ones to know? Why was most of our talent the last ones to know? That's the question you should be asking yourself. Why are we treating our talent this way and messing with their money? That's the biggest thing for me. There was never an opportunity for Ace or Amy to book anything with Next Level because everything changed continuously, and there was no rhyme or reason to anything that Josh Fields said or did, actually.
If I could give one prime example, if I'm wrong on this, at the very beginning, the plan was every month, fourth Saturday. And then suddenly, when the building went down, boom, you're running against Viral on Masters Weekend in April. And any of your talent that was planning fourth Saturday has now had the rug pulled out, and you had the rug pulled out in terms of those bookings that you had set up months in advance.
Absolutely. The schedule changed 3 times during my short tenure as the head of creative, which was around about from September, October-ish of last year till June of this year. It changed 3 times, and then I've been told with what dates have been announced that with my firing, it has changed a 4th time. The schedule has changed as many times as they've run.
And
nobody can work with that.
We had an entire roster already reached out in place, good for the dates, before the new year. When we found out he was the book, and we had that thorough conversation with Josh, letting him know, hey, we don't fly by the seat of our pants. Things are going to be booked out multiple months in advance because we like to book with everything is connected to something. I don't have to tell you, Barry, you know.
Yes.
So when things started changing immediately, I was already like, right off the bat, I literally told Ace when he told me, venue changed, date changed. I said, this is never going to work, ever. I'm done. I'm like, I washed my hands of it immediately. I was pretty much fed up from the jump because the roster we wanted and had storylines booked for already wasn't going to be a show, because whether it be his fault or not, but not securing a venue before releasing a year worth of dates, that is your fault, buddy. That's your fault.
That is insanity is what that is. Why would you do that? Why would you do that? Why would you set expectations that you were not 100% certain you could meet, or at least attempt to meet? Like 12 dates. 12 days is a lot to release Plus, if you know already that you are pissing in the Cheerios of at least 3 other promotions in the area, why would you show your hand and give them all of your show dates up to 12 months in advance? Because if I don't like you, now I have 12 months to schedule my cards and get talent booked to go head-to-head with you and hurt you in every single way humanly possible. That was a lot of arrogance, is what that was. Or it revolves back to my previous statement of Josh Fields is an idiot. Because it may not have been arrogance, it may have been ignorance. But it was definitely one or both of them.
I don't think Viral would have scheduled to run against you. But when you scheduled to run against them, you opened a can of worms that was to your, yeah, I see Amy shaking your head. I mean, that was just not a good thing to do. And I had a bad feeling in my stomach as soon as that first date got canceled and it didn't run. I said, this is off to such a terrible start. You're already like behind the 8 ball and you haven't even run your first show yet. So I wanted to be optimistic going into the first show, but I really didn't feel too optimistic going into the first show.
Nope. And we advised Josh in the beginning. He was very open with us with the fact that he was fired up and ready to show everyone what he had, and he didn't care whose feelings he hurt. And we were like, whoa, hold on. Do you realize how wrestling works? Like, playing politics is absolutely part of the game. So we advised Josh to go to Viral and as a paying fan, and reach out and let the promoter know, hey, we support you guys. We're not here to run you guys out of town or like we said, be cordial. And then we even advised him, hey, how about you go make a Facebook status, since you love making social media posts, talking about how wrestling's doing in Augusta and how great of a show Viral put on. I said, or Ace told him, you don't have to fluff it up. Just how about we let it be known we're not here for blood. We're not here to try to make enemies or run on the same nights, et cetera, et cetera. And then what did he turn around? And he did that. He did take Ace's advice to do that, then turned around and booked all the shows head-to-head with Viral.
Mm-hmm. And he's also apparently, as Steve had pointed out earlier, he was already apparently in a deep feud with Viral to begin with. And that's something that never came up in conversation with us. Like, why would you not let us know that you're already in a deep thing with them before taking our advice to go do that? Like, what calls can we make when we don't have all the information? So when one side of the team is withholding information, then you can't make educated decisions. You know, we had an example of this earlier today, because had I not spoke to Larry Goodman earlier before this interview, he would not have realized we didn't have the password to get into the room to do the interview.
There would have been no interview.
So if I would have held that and just assumed that Larry's got the password, then what would we have done? We would have made poor decisions. And that's what Josh did. He withheld information from us, which caused us, because in hindsight, I agree with Steve, that was a poor decision on our part to get him to do that with Viral. But when you don't know the relationships of these people involved, and the one person who does won't tell you about it, what are you supposed to do?
And we tried to get Josh to open up to us about virtually anything. Josh, it seems like Josh was so uninterested in having these conversations that should have been had anytime, like before we would leave the show. We would try to sit down, have a come to Jesus meeting. Let's get on the same page before next show. Or is there anything you want specifically? The only thing Josh ever pitched that he wanted was to try to interject himself as part of the show. He pitched, when he found out we had Cruel, he pitched being either wrestling Cruel or being Cruel's tag partner, because it would draw.
You see this bald spot right here, Larry? That was directly from that idea.
I just want to say, we aren't doing that. we're not doing that.
He was going to be Cruel's tag partner or wrestle Cruel.
Whichever. We were, so whatever I did, he would trust us. And I said, Josh, first off, if I even wanted to entertain that idea, we wouldn't just do it a week before the show with no advertisement and no build to this. But also, didn't Timothy Blackman do that down at IWE? And aren't we trying to not be IWE? Okay, rewind here.
Well, his response to that was, oh, okay. But then the very next month was episode 4, and he walked out there and cut a promo setting up an angle with Tim that nobody knew anything about, but when he went out there.
So I wasn't at episode 4. He actually brought up doing something with Tim or pitched it right there in front of the live crowd and you didn't know anything about it?
He went out to cut a promo and said that next show he would tell everybody why he left IWE.
We have the footage. We can upload the show. We have the footage of every show, actually.
We do not. We do not have the Super Jaw footage. We never got it.
Oh, that's right.
We have selected stuff. We have selected stuff from all the shows except the one that they filmed, which I believe was episode 2.
Yeah.
Episode 2, to be honest, was the only show that it felt like Josh really gave a shit. It seemed like there was a little more of a vested interest. And then we drew a little bit better, and the show was solid, and he got kind of fired up. And then I think he just completely, after that was when we ran head-to-head with Viral on the Masters, and I think he was just checked out by that point. It's so odd because I don't think Josh was all in at the start. I think he got all in after the first show, and he was all in for a grand total of maybe 2 weeks. And then we did the second show, and it did really well, or did a lot better. And then I think once he realized that he was going up against Viral on the Masters the next month with the calendar that he booked, by the way, in the town that he lives in, I think at that point he gave up. I think he expected to book all of IWE's people. I think he expected to draw the crowds that IWE was drawing at their peak right off the bat. And he expected to just come in and be celebrated and everyone love him and talk about how great he was in pro wrestling. And the thing is probably not the last part, but the rest of that probably could have happened had he carried his end of the deal promotionally wise, doing the town, making sure that people got into the seats. Because we know he's capable of it because he helped do it in IWE. From what I'm told, this dude's an incredible car salesman. Cool. Selling cars is not promoting wrestling.
Mm-hmm. So
if he go ahead.
If he had to do over, I know this is an easy one, but I mean, or maybe it may be a hard one. But if he had to do over, is there anything you would do differently?
I can add what I would have done is the very
absolutely. I would have not worked for Josh Fields. That's what I would have done differently. I don't think at any point in time was it a conducive relationship with him. And I went on record with Steve the other day on the phone and said that I believe he may be the absolute worst promoter that I've ever physically been in the presence of in my entire life and career. And he absolutely does not take any of this serious at all. And I believe his results speak for themselves.
Wow. Okay, then. Thank you guys for doing this show. I'm sorry we've lost Steve, so he's not here on. But thanks a lot for doing it, and I wish you guys well with Pro South, of course, as I always do.
Thank
you. It's great to be on.
Wish I could longer because I would have loved to give some more insights, but there's always another time and place for that.
There definitely will be another time. Definitely. Take care, you guys.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
You're welcome. So thanks for tuning in for the Tipping Point. For Stephen Platinum, Larry Goodman, Amy Haven, Ace Haven, ChaynMale. Good night from the Tipping Point.